Welcome to Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus. I'm Sports Director John Scott. Paul Hamilton popping in here at the top of the show because it's officially playoff time for the Sabres. The NFL draft, though, beginning a week from tonight. So we'll continue our draft prep for what the Bills could possibly be doing as well. That coming up a little bit later. But, of course, we have to start with postseason hockey in Buffalo for the first time in 15 years, at least. We know it begins on Sunday, Paul. What in the world is going on with the NHL? I know there's still some things in the Western Conference that need to be determined, but isn't it about as on brand as it gets for this league to not, days before the postseason begins, have anything beyond just a couple games in their times?
It's insane. I mean, just people deciding. Not everybody who's going to the game lives in Buffalo. I mean, I have one of my best friends who has a ticket for the game. She didn't know when she was supposed to be in Buffalo. Now she knows what day. She doesn't know what time, but she knows what day she's supposed to be here from New York City. The Boston Bruins, they would have had to have a charter ready to go tomorrow and a charter ready to go on Saturday. So now you've got two charters booked, waiting to go. Media, not that anybody cares about media, but the Boston Bruins media did not know until noon if they were coming to Buffalo tomorrow. I mean, now you got to make your plans. I mean, you got to get flights, you got to get hotels, and they didn't know if they were even going to have 24 hours advance notice to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I'm sure you, like myself, we've been in constant communication with the Sabres as well, and the response I get from them, and I believe these people, they say, I'm sorry, John, we don't even know.
Yeah.
We are the Buffalo Sabres hosting our first playoff game in 15 years in a matter of just a few days here. So that's where things currently stand. What we do know, Paul, is that it is the Boston Bruins in the opening round here. Just your initial thoughts on what this matchup is going to be for the Sabres.
Well, if you look at the two teams during the regular season, one thing I think you have to remember is there were two games in Boston, and they were both played in October. Neither team is what they were in October. So there's not, and Lindy Ruff said himself, they're not even really looking at those games. They're looking at what the Bruins have been doing the last 2 months. That's the kind of stuff they're looking at. And because the Bruins have improved, the Sabres have improved from when those games were played. So you're playing a team, the Sabres, one thing I think you can take away, they've had trouble with Pastrnak and Geekie. They have all sorts of problems, that you're talking about guys who are, big scorers. I mean, in the last 4 years, I looked because I was looking at Tage Thompson, who has 40 goals in 3 of the last 4 years. When I looked it up, I think it was 2 days ago or 3 days ago, the leading goal scorer in those 4 years was Pastrnak and Draisaitl with 180. Tage had 160, so he was like 20 behind. So the Sabres do have trouble with Pastrnak. Geekie, the last couple of years, it came out of nowhere to all of a sudden become a mid-30s goal scorer, and he scores big against the Sabres, too. They have McAvoy on the blue line, which is a very good defenseman for them. And, of course, we'll talk about goaltending in a little bit. But the one advantage you have over the Boston Bruins, they're good. The Sabres are number 4 in the league. The Bruins are number 8. But they also are the dumbest team you will ever play. They will take penalty after penalty after penalty. They're tough to play against. They'll hit you. They'll come after you. In the regular season, they want to fight you. Whether they will do that in the playoffs, I don't know. But if the parade in the penalty box continues, now the Sabres power play becomes more important than ever because you must make them pay. If Zadorov, who is the dumbest player in the National Hockey League, takes the stupid penalties that he takes, and the rest of them take their penalties, you must make the Bruins pay for doing that.
Zadorov, obviously a former Sabres draft pick. Casey Middlestat, Henry Jokiharju, also some former Sabres that will be on the opposite side of things as they return to the postseason. You mentioned all of this scoring, but Jeremy Swayman, I think, is the big difference and key factor here for the Sabres to advance to the second round, because we know in the playoffs, even though the Sabres haven't been in it for quite some time, goaltending the ultimate equalizer and can steal you series.
Well, the Bruins had both Allmark and Swayman, and they decided we got to decide which one, and it was Swayman. The first year it didn't go real well, but then it did, and I think Swayman made his mark with Tage Thompson and Team USA at the World Championship. Of course, Tage scored the golden goal in overtime to win, but Swayman was just lights out in that. And I talked to Tage about him today, being teammates with him, and he said he's just such an intense competitor, wants to win at all costs, and when he gets hot, he stays hot. He said he's just a very good goaltender, very confident in what he does, and a huge competitor. That's the other part. Not only Pasternak and Geekie, and of course on defense McAvoy, but this guy, Swayman, he can steal you a series if he gets really hot. And, that would be a concern for the Sabres. Now, the Sabres, they can play it tough. They can play it, let's wait for the mistake, or they can run and gun with you. However you want to do it, they can do it. We had a caller today on our station from Boston who said, oh, the Bruins are so tough. Your figure skaters aren't going to want to. It's like, well, I guess you haven't watched the Sabres. The Sabres may not win the fight, but they're at the fight. Mm-hmm. And they're more than willing to be at the fight. So I don't think the Bruins are going to run the Sabres through the back wall, but I'd be more concerned about what Pasternak, Geekie, Swayman, and McAvoy are going to do.
100%. Sabres general manager Jarmo Kekalainen among those speaking with the media yesterday ahead of the postseason getting under the way. And one of the big talking points to Kekalainen is something we all are curious about, and it's the playoff experience versus lack of playoff experience. It's not that actual big of a discrepancy on the roster by my count. 12 players have actually had postseason experience. 17, others haven't. And the 17, though, is the Rasmus Dahlins and the Tage Thompsons and the Josh Doans and the more prominent players here. How big of an impact do you think it's going to have, the inexperience for the Sabres this time of year?
The Sabres have passed every test this year. One of the tests is being in a playoff race. A lot of these same guys have never been in a playoff race. Most years, except one, they've been out of it by Christmas or New Year's, and then they play out the string. Well, this year, they were in last place starting on December 9th. They were in last place in the conference, third last place in the NHL. They had to keep climbing and keep climbing and keep climbing. They did it. They learned they set a standard for themselves, and it was a high standard. And they get mad when they don't meet it, and they meet it most nights. And that's the difference in this team. So I'm not extremely concerned about it. And you've got Bo Byram, who as a rookie won the Stanley Cup with Colorado. I remember seeing him. That's when I kind of woke up to him and thought, he's a good player. He really played really well during that playoff series. They brought in some playoff experience. Pearson won the Stanley Cup his first year with the LA Kings. Schenn has won with the Tampa Bay Lightning, so he knows what it's all about. Tuck has played with Vegas 4 straight years. He was in the playoffs. Zucker, he knows what it's about. So the Sabres that haven't been part of it, and Tage Thompson one of them, but look at the pressure games he played in 2 different stints with Team USA to win gold medals. So that's pressure too. So he's been through that pressure. So I don't think it's really going to bug him. There might be some nerves in game 1, but usually when you have nerves like that, they're gone within 3-4 minutes in the game.
And I do think the elevation in the type of play and the grittiness and the physicality, I think we saw them struggle with that little week and a half, 2-week stretch they had before clinching the playoff berth. And I think that was really going to be beneficial for them. It's different in the playoffs, certainly, 100%, but they showed the ability to kind of get put on their heels and recalibrate and say, oh, this is how we have to play. Another thing that should help the Sabres, especially out the gate, Paul, is the fact that they have home ice in this series, and should they make it farther, at least into the second round as well. How big of an impact do you think the fans inside KeyBank Center can have to maybe weather the storm and calm some of those nerves, especially out the gate in series number 1?
History tells us road teams, home teams, it's about 50-50 in the playoffs. But the Sabre fans have really, really come. Kekalainen was talking the other day about it. He goes, that Tampa game, and Bo Byram was out for the opening faceoff. He said he had chills before the puck dropped because the fans were going absolutely berserk. So that gives them a little momentum. That gives them a little oomph when you have that to be able to, really, hey, we're going here. Wow. It goes through your veins. So, and Kekalainen said, it's hard to imagine that they're going to ramp this up. And he goes, I bet you they will. I mean, he's looking forward to that. So that, I think, can help the team, especially out of the gates, to help them as a home ice advantage. But at the end of the day, a lot of road teams do win. And as I said, it's about 50-50.
Yeah, we will see how it is. And let's bring things full circle here. The last time the Sabres were playing playoff games inside, it wasn't KeyBank Center all the way back then, Paul. It was Lindy Ruff who was also on the bench. What is the impact he can have throughout this postseason series? And quickly, should he be the Jack Adams winner?
It's between him and Muse, the Penguins, to me. I think those are the two guys. Lindy Ruff has been through this with the Buffalo Sabres, with the Dallas Stars, with the New Jersey Devils. And he talked about the Devils. He goes, we were right up there in the standings. We lost the first 2 games at home. Then we went on the road and won the next 2 games on the road. So he doesn't panic in a series. He flows with the series. I think he's very good at making adjustments in playoff series. I remember that when he was in Buffalo. And I don't see why that would have changed at all now that he's in Buffalo again.
And that's where maybe you're going to see the impact made by some of the trade deadline moves. With Schenn, you mentioned, were we going to see Schenn? I don't know. But do you maybe trust Schenn Stanley more than Metza with his lack of experience in the postseason? And how does he have his pulse on that? We understand all but likely, even though Alex Lyon going to return to practice here soon, it's likely UPL's net moving forward. All right, thank you, Paul. We're going to take a timeout from hockey, get to the other big story just a week away, the NFL Draft. Vic Carucci discussing the Bills' potential plans with another draft analyst. That conversation next here on Sports Talk Live Plus. Welcome back here to Sports Talk Live Plus. The NFL Draft beginning a week from tonight with the first round. Bills currently slated to pick 26th overall. Our Vic Carucci continuing to get us ready with more draft talk, this time discussing what Brandon Beane might do with NFL Draft analyst Brett Coleman.
Give me your overall thoughts on how you see the Bills approaching this draft.
I don't necessarily think they're in a terrible spot here, but there are a few finishing pieces that they need to grab, right? I think they finally need to have a long-term answer at edge. They kind of keep bringing in guys, veterans on their last legs to try to, bring them some magic, and it just hasn't really worked out like they've wanted it to. Defensive tackle, like they're not completely out of options at DT, but it feels like they've never really had the guy who can kind of completely, really like the piece to kind of build your run defense around. They've always had guys that were okay against the run, but other than Daquan Jones, they've never really had anybody that was dominant against the run, and they've paid for that in the past. Receiver may or may not be okay after the DJ Moore acquisition. Running back is obviously great. Offensive line, we could just find a new left guard. Like, they're not that far off, but it's just a couple little finishing pieces that they need. So I'm looking at edge. I'm looking at DT. If there's another receiver that they like that falls, I could see them even going for it again and just trying to get 4 deep at that spot. They're not that far away. And I kind of see some of the moves that they made this year, like bringing in Bradley Chubb, as just kind of them doing the same thing that they've done for a while. I kind of want to build on that and just almost like go like a shotgun approach and just fix these issues once and for all.
So with the 26th overall pick, and knowing what in terms of this draft's depth and quality, etc., what would be for them, you think, as close to a first round value if they went there, given the spots you addressed?
I would probably look at, TJ Parker out of Clemson. I talked to him at the combine, really bright young man. I think he would fit in well in Buffalo, but he also profiles as a power rusher, which is something that historically has been very successful in the NFL. If you're looking at the aggregate measurement of every top 10 edge rusher as far as pressures in the NFL for the last decade, they basically look exactly like TJ Parker, right? 6'3", low 260s, 33.5-inch arms, probably about 60th percentile explosion score. but having the ability to rush with power. And he actually stayed at Clemson despite getting offers for more money elsewhere. He stayed at Clemson because he wanted to be coached by Chris Rumpf, who was their edge coaches at Clemson. You know, he's somebody who coached Khalil Mack in the league, Daniil Hunter, Whitney Merciless, all of these guys that look like TJ Parker. He wanted to develop an NFL skill set. I think there's a decent shot he's going to be there for Buffalo's pick in the late first round. And I think he would give them like a true young, potentially dominant in the future power rusher. He's nowhere near his ceiling. And culturally, I think he's a really good fit too. I think he's a really hard worker. He's a great kid. Town would love him. And, you know, better than having two edge rushers, having three, in my opinion. And they might need four if they really want to finish this thing off.
If they stay put without a second round pick, and then you get to now the third round, strategically, and you could address this from two ways. Could they stay put and say go for another need spot? Is there enough depth to make that work, potentially work in round three? Or do you think it's going to require some maneuvering to perhaps get that second round back, pick back in order to do something else? And I'd like to know what you think the next important thing would be after the inside D lineman.
Yeah, I think day two is kind of the sweet spot here. So, you know, they already gave up one of their D2 or day two picks just to get receiver out of the way already. Like, I think that was basically them saying, we don't think the receiver that we like in the first round is going to be there. So we're just going to take care of that with a round two pick. Financially, it's not like the best thing, but again, they're in the window. They don't necessarily care about that. They're really trying to go for it now. So, okay, we're going to take care of a receiver on day two. We think we can get the edge that we're looking for on day one. Later on day two, the world's their oyster, right? If there's one of the many, many linebackers or safeties that they just see as a value that falls in round three, which is potentially very possible. There's a bunch of value defensive tackles, like say like Dominique Orange or Proctor, that's going to be there. Different flavors of DT, but like they can get one there as well. And if you're looking for like a true outside X receiver, which I still don't really think they have on the roster. DJ Moore, not necessarily an X. Khalil Shakir, obviously not really an X. Josh Palmer, he can do it. It's not really his best role here. I would look at like a Ted Hurst, right? Somebody who's probably going to be there in the third round. He's big, he's long. He also faced more snaps against press coverage as an X receiver than almost everybody in this class. In fact, the Indiana kids didn't even pass him in terms of snaps against press coverage until a national championship game. They played like 5 extra games than him. So he's very experienced against press. He's got the size they look for. And since Keon Coleman hasn't really worked out yet, I just kind of keep wanting to bring guys into that role until they find somebody who can do it, because they haven't really had it in a long time.
This is said to be a defensive-driven draft for the most part, right? With the types of players that are there, we never know how that goes. But in terms of what the Bills have to do, which is rebuild a defense to a 3-4 model, it feels to me like, throughout this draft, this is how you're going to try to go about it. And in your mind, is this the kind of draft that lends itself to those type of athletes?
You know, it's interesting, the 4-3 versus 3-4 discussion, right? Because if you're looking at the modern NFL, it's kind of the same thing no matter what. You're really only going to see a major difference in a 3-4 versus a 4-3 when you're in base personnel, which most teams, on average, they might only be in base like 25% of the time, maybe 30% of the time. If you look at Seattle, they were in nickel and dime 90% of the time just because they could, no matter what the offense was in, right? So the 3-4 versus 4-3 thing really only matters on like early downs in between the 20s, and that's only in the offense is has multiple tight ends or a fullback on the field. Other than that, it's largely going to look the same thing as like a 4-3 base team, right? You're going to have 4 guys in the line of scrimmage, sometimes 5 if you're trying to show blitz or you can bring a blitz, and you're going to have 2 off-ball linebackers, and you're going to have 5 DBs. That is generally how the Bills defense has operated for a long time, because they had the luxury of like great safeties and a great nickel, and Tehran and Micah and Jordan and all those guys. Like they could get away with playing nickel against base. I still think they're going to play a bunch of nickel against base here. It's just they're going to have a few more downs per game where they're going to have 3 big bodies on the field. Right now it's going to be Sanders, Walker, and Oliver. I still think they could add one in the draft, but it's not going to like really, really change the defense that much. It's really more of like a situational extra body. And, you know, maybe we might see like 10 snaps a game if I had to guess.
Some good stuff there from Brett, and I'm starting to turn around and be in agreement there about maybe we're overselling the switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4. And count me in as someone firmly on the edge rusher for the Bills. Should they stay in the first round, I do, though, think Brandon Beane would like to trade back in a perfect world. Once again, the NFL draft next Thursday through Saturday. Now back to hockey we're going to go. Paul with a second shift to discuss the rest of the NHL playoffs. We wrap things up here on Sports Talk Live Plus after the break. Final few minutes here on Sports Talk Live Plus. Paul is back in the hot seat here as we're going to look beyond the Sabres and Bruins in the first round and get his thoughts on the rest of the NHL playoff picture. Of course, we don't know all their times and dates either as well, Paul. But here is the other 5 series that are definitively locked in, still need some things to be sorted out in the West. When you see this, what stands out to you?
Right side of the screen, Montreal and Tampa. I'm looking forward to that series. And Minnesota and Dallas.
The 2 series that are stupid that are happening in the first round.
Right, that shouldn't be happening.
Does it wrong. Yeah.
I would be looking really forward to them if they were in the third round.
100%.
You know, but that's not what we get. But yeah, and Dallas is so interesting because they have such a good team, but they just seem to flame out. And like there was one year that I picked them to win the cup, but it just seems like for whatever reason it doesn't work for them. But I still think that is going to be a good series. And if it happens, if Colorado somehow plays Edmonton at some point, I think that would be an excellent series also.
You mentioned the team that you picked for the Stanley Cup. As you look at these matchups, obviously Colorado would have to be at least in the mix as well. Who do you think from either conference is probably the favorite to get to the Stanley Cup final?
Well, the Hurricanes always kind of run into their problems too, so I would say maybe Montreal or Tampa if you're not picking the Sabres. On the other side, I hate to go with the favorite, but I know it's not sexy, but Colorado, I just think they're from top to bottom are built for it.
I mean, they have been so dominant. They hit their little bump, which every team does, and it was good that we were reminded of that even when the Sabres hit it again a few weeks ago. Colorado's just been so good. Ironically, when I was out there for the Bills playoff game, I watched Colorado, and they got rolled by Nashville. Ryan O'Reilly looked like it was 2019 again here. But I would agree, it would have to be Colorado. When you look at the Sabres, how far can they go?
As I said earlier in the show, they have passed every test so far. It would not shock me if all of a sudden they pulled off what Lindy Ruff did against the Stars last time.
We wait and see. We'll see you Sunday. We'll see you right back here next Thursday.